Alright, so this video is basically just me talking about Levi's birth story. It is currently February 27th, 2023, so Levi is 14 months, gonna be 15 months old soon. So it's been a while since he's been born, and I've wanted to do this for a while, but I keep forgetting or keep just like putting it off because this feels weird to me to just video myself talking. But I want to be able to remember this, and I want Levi to be able to watch this or listen to this or know what it was like when he came into the world and hear from me as I still remember the details and still remember what I was feeling and really what the Lord taught me through that experience, because it was something that was really cool for Avery and me as a couple, but then also for me individually, for my faith, and for Levi, like knowing that the Lord was watching over him from day one. It's like I knit you in your mother's womb. Before you took your first breath, I knew you. Before you were formed, I knew you. And I just think that that is so cool. And then also just seeing like his name, Levi, that we decided to name him before he was born, and that became a prayer for his life, kind of seeing that personality in his birth story, but then also now that he's over a year old, seeing his determination and his stubbornness, but then also just how much he loves people, and he's so funny and has a big personality, but he is just so determined and he gets frustrated really quickly. And so kind of my hope and prayer now that Avery and I have talked about this for a lot, our hope and prayer now is seeing these things, seeing this big personality that he has already, really helping form that into something where he's using that for the Lord. And so instead of getting really angry and frustrated when something is hard, really leaning into that and knowing like I'm building character and I'm building perseverance here. But he is so determined already, and he already is so just strong and capable, and he has done like every milestone early, not because I'm practicing with him, not because Avery is trying to get him to do these things, but because Levi wants to do them. And once he realizes like, oh, other people are walking at 9 months old, he wanted to be able to do it, so he would start like crying because he was getting frustrated as he was trying and couldn't do it but kept trying. And so it's just crazy to see that level of determination and just big personality in such a little person. And yeah, we see it all of the time, just like him trying so hard and getting frustrated, but then we just give a little bit of encouragement of like, it's okay bud, just try again, you can do it. And like he just lights up, he's so excited about it. So yeah, that wasn't the point of this though. My point of this video is to talk about his birth story. So it might be kind of long, but I don't want to forget these things, so I wanted to share them now. So Levi's due date was December 1st, 2021. And I thought that he was going to be born early because my mom had me and all my 3 siblings early, and Avery's mom had him and both his brothers early. Well, my brother was late, but he was originally going to be early, but then the doctors like stopped him from being born early. So anyway, we were mostly early, so I thought Levi was going to be born early. So I was like ready for, like Thanksgiving, I was like, he's going to be here. But the weeks went on, and December 1st came and went, and I had a doctor's appointment on the 1st, and there was like no progress. I was having contractions, but it was they weren't painful. It was just very like casual contractions. And so, yeah, I was like really kind of sad when his due date came, and I went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, like things aren't really progressing, like, but it's normal. You know, they said that all the time. It's normal to be late for your first baby. Um, so I was doing like all the things to go into labor naturally, because right now the thing is not like letting you go more than 2 weeks past your due date. Um, if you get to the 42-week mark, um, you're basically induced, no matter, really, that's the like common practice. So I really did not want to be induced. I wanted to have a natural labor and natural delivery. I wasn't 100% against getting an epidural, but I was like, that's like the last resort. I want to try all of these things myself, and really had the perspective of like, the Lord made women to bear children. And so my body has that ability, and I don't want to get an epidural or, you know, do anything out of fear. And so I didn't want to be afraid of the pain, and was working a lot like in myself and in my prayers and with reading, of like not wanting to have fear of the unknown or fear of the process of giving birth. And so that was a big part of the reason I didn't want to get an epidural, and that wasn't a part of my plan. I had all of these plans, and Avery and I were on the same page of all of these other ways to deal with pain and really lean into each other and lean into the Lord, with prayer and a playlist, and really like calming my body and my mind. So that was the goal. But if you're induced, all those things are a lot harder. Your body's already not naturally working through labor. It's the medicine that's causing the contractions and things. So I really just wanted to go into labor naturally. So I was really hoping to do that before the 42-week mark. But at my 40-week appointment, my blood pressure was high. So they said, if you come back next week and your blood pressure is high, then that's a diagnosis of gestational hypertension, which would be a reason to induce. So I went back at 41 weeks. I had high blood pressure again. So my midwife, who, her name was Emily, she actually, just the way it worked out, she ended up being the midwife I saw for most of my appointments. And so she was the one that I saw at my 41-week appointment, and she was like, your blood pressure is at the lowest it could be to still be considered high, but it is high, and so like you are diagnosed today with gestational hypertension. So the like medical, like, what is that called? Their like opinion is to go to the hospital and get induced. And if you guys don't know what that is, being induced is basically like where they make labor start themselves through giving you different medications. And so I had seen when the nurse took my blood pressure that it was high, and so before my midwife Emily came into the room, Avery and I were already talking about it and kind of like preparing for Emily to say that. And so we were like, yeah, like if that's what you guys recommend, we are already past when we thought he would be here, and so let's do it. So we went home, and they said like whenever a bed was open, the hospital would be calling us to drive down there. So it was actually like a really weird experience, because we went back to our apartment, and I took a shower, I got ready, we made sure our bags were completely packed, and I tried to take a nap. I didn't actually fall asleep at all, because I was just kind of like, you know, I was excited more than nervous at that point. But I was able to lay there and rest. Like all the lights were down, my eyes were closed. So I was able to rest, and I'm pretty sure that appointment was at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then when we got a call from the hospital, it wasn't until like 7 or so. So that was some time to like get ready and then, you know, take a nap or at least rest. So we drove down to Morgantown, and that was like the longest 30-minute drive ever. I was really nervous driving down there, and then when we got to the hospital, it was like it didn't start super well because when the nurse put the IV in, I like almost passed out. I don't know, it was super weird. But I felt so like lightheaded, and I think it was just all the nerves. But then the midwife that was there was like so bubbly. It was crazy. And she made me feel really calm because she was just joking around a lot. But I was telling Avery, like, I'm glad she wasn't the one there when I was actually giving birth, because that would have been a different experience. But her being there when I came in and helping me like feel comfortable right away was really awesome. And so all of this, like the whole story, I'm just like, wow, I can see the Lord's hand in all of it, in the way that like he was present and guiding us and protecting us, and just like, you know, helping throughout the process of just like giving us that peace, not in like, you know, the Lord made it so that midwife was there. I'm not saying that it was all divine intervention, but I just see the Lord's hand in it all. And so she gave me this medication to, what they call, ripen your cervix. Also, this is going to go into some detail that if you are not a medical person or you don't like knowing this stuff, you might not want to watch this. But yeah, I'm just like, I'm no shame. It's a natural process. The Lord made us this way. You know, this is an experience that I had that brought Levi into the world, so I don't have any shame about it. But I did, but I don't anymore. So there's this medication that like ripens your cervix, and one of them you have to wait 12 hours for it to work or whatever, and then the other one you have to wait 4 hours. So at this point, we checked into the hospital on December 7th, 2021 at like, it was like 9 p.m. Between 8 and 9 p.m. I think, or right around 9. So we were like, let's just do the 4-hour one, because that 12 hours is a long time. And I was already progressing. I was having contractions for a long time. They just like weren't doing that much. They weren't that hopeful, but like I was already progressing, so she didn't think it was gonna take the whole 12 hours anyway. But you can't move on before 12 hours for some reason. I don't know. You nurses, doctors out there probably know what I'm talking about more than I do. But so then we waited the 4 hours, and she checked me, and she was like, wow, like everything looks really good. So then they started giving me Pitocin, which is what starts contractions and makes your contractions regular. Actually though, I don't think she started that right away, because I was already having contractions. So they waited a little bit, the contractions kind of slowed down, so then they gave me Pitocin sometime throughout the night. So Avery and I at first were like playing cards, hanging out, whatever. Then as it got later, I was getting tired, so I like tried to rest but couldn't really sleep, was having contractions on and off. And then in the morning at some time, they started really picking up. Avery and I went on a walk. There was a lot of different things, and honestly I don't remember the exact order of things, but yeah, it was just, they got stronger, kept getting Pitocin, all this kind of stuff. And then at some point in the morning, I think it was around 9 a.m., because at this point, the midwife, Emily, she is actually the midwife who's at the hospital from 7 to 7 on December 8th. So we were like, it's pretty likely that she's going to be there when Levi's born. Which was awesome, because I just felt really close to her, and she was a great midwife, and I felt really comfortable with her. So I was really excited that she was going to be the one to help birth Levi. So at like 9 a.m., I asked for them to check me because I felt really strong contractions. And so Emily checked, and she was like, you're 5 centimeters, so you're definitely progressing, but you have a long way to go. And so then Avery and I were talking, and I like was not feeling very good. It was getting to the point where I like couldn't really like talk as I was having these contractions. They were like really bothering me, obviously really bothering me. And that's the point where like I really was hoping to be able to have a room that had a tub, and I was like, I would have wanted to go in the tub then, but there wasn't that option. But I was also really worried I had read a lot that you don't want to start using coping mechanisms until you need them, because if you start using them too early, then they're not going to be helpful when you actually need them. So I was like, I'm only 5 centimeters, that's like halfway. I don't know if I should start using these like coping mechanisms yet, because like I could be in labor for hours and hours and hours after now. So I was trying to just like do it on my own, and in retrospect I probably should have started using, like I had like a diffuser, and I had like a labor playlist, and I don't know, we had like a ton of different things. We had like a birth ball. I used the birth ball, was like bouncing on that sometimes. We went on a walk a couple of times, but I didn't even really like going on a walk because it was like you could barely walk anywhere, and then I felt really like awkward when I was in the hallway and I would have a contraction, and someone told me, I think my nurse, or maybe it was Emily, one of them told me to lean on the wall when I was having a contraction when we were walking, and to like imagine Levi like moving down. And I don't know why, but I just felt so awkward. I felt like, because there were people like all over in the hallway, I felt like everyone was watching me, and I don't know, I just like didn't enjoy that. And so so then I was not comfortable at all. So then we asked Emily to come back in and check me again, and I was 7 centimeters. So, and I was like, okay, well, no, sorry, I told that wrong. So at 5 centimeters, I was like, we were talking about getting an epidural, because I was like, this is really intense already, and I can do this for a while longer, but if this is for like 12 more hours and it just keeps getting more and more and more and more intense, I don't think I can do this. So Avery and I were talking about it, and I decided to get an epidural. So then by the time I got the epidural, and by the time I got the epidural, it was I think like 11. So then I was trying to sleep, and I swear we like just turned the lights off when the nurse came in and was like, hey, we're getting like D cells on your monitor, so we need to make sure that like it's like getting the correct heart rate for Levi. And so she checked it, and it was correct. Like Levi's heart rate was decelerating. And so then Emily came in, and she was like, sometimes if you're progressing really quickly, that can be normal. So then she checked me, and I was at like 7 centimeters, I think, when she checked, and it was like not even an hour after they had checked before. And then I progressed to 9 centimeters, like super quickly. And so it was crazy, because getting the epidural, I was actually like fighting against my contractions. With the pain, I was just like so tense. And so when I got the epidural, it just allowed my body to relax and my cervix to like dilate open super quickly. So within an hour, I went to 9 centimeters. And then Emily was like, it's gonna be time to push soon. Like, are you ready? And when you get an epidural, you're supposed to like get a catheter in and stuff like that too. And like they hadn't done anything else yet, because it just progressed so quickly. So then we just got to like the pushing stage, and that's when I was just like, okay, this seems super intense in like movies and stuff. I thought I was gonna be like sweating and out of breath and all this stuff. And I mean, it is intense, it's like tiring, but I didn't realize you're pushing during your contractions and then you rest between them. So you're pushing like 3 times in a row while you're having contractions, and then you're resting for like a minute or 2, and then you push like 3 times in a row again. And so I was like, wow, this is actually like more manageable than I thought. And Levi was like progressing well until he hit there's like stations, like -4 to +4, and then +4 is when you're crowning. I'm pretty sure, if I remember that correctly. But I do know that between the +2 and +3 station, Levi was stuck. So we progressed really quickly to like +2, +3, and then like when I was pushing, he would like move forward, but then right when I would stop pushing, he like moved back. And so I pushed for like an hour and a half, and Levi's heart rate, really the whole time, like it would decel at times and then come back, and they would like mention it, and some of the nurses were like making jokes about it. They were like, yeah, boys like to come into the world with a little bit of drama, like they a lot of times have a harder time with labor and delivery than girls do. um, so yeah, his heart rate was kind of like fluctuating throughout the whole process of labor. It was like he wasn't really wanting to be born yet. Um, and then when he was stuck, when I was pushing, he his heart rate started to decline like more. And I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was in a range where it was starting to get a little scary. Before that though, it was a really cool process. I think Avery thought it was kind of weird because between contractions, my nurse was so sweet. Avery was holding one leg, the nurse was holding the other leg, and then Emily was like helping. And I just got to talk to them. Like I would push, they would like coach me through that, and then while we were waiting for the next contraction, I was asking them questions about their lives, about being a nurse and a midwife, and just a lot about their life. And I thought it was really cool because it made me feel way more comfortable to get to talk about, like, I'm in this like such a vulnerable place, that, and these are two like strangers. Emily I knew kind of, but like just knew from my OB appointments. So it was really cool to me to be able to talk to them and ask them questions about their life while I was in like the most vulnerable place I've ever been. I thought it was cool. And so, but then, yeah, Levi got stuck and his heart rate started to decline. So then they gave me oxygen to breathe between my contractions to help to give him more oxygen. But they were basically like, this isn't an emergent situation, but now it's getting to like a concerning place. So they called the OB that was there in, and I don't remember her name, but she was super sweet, super kind. And she came in and was like, yeah, I think a vacuum assisted delivery would be helpful, because they were like, twice I pushed and she was like, yeah, she's pushing really well, but he's not progressing. He is like moving back right when the pushes are complete, and his heart rate's concerning. So we just want to get him out now because this stage has gone on longer than it should. So that was such a weird moment, because part of me like almost felt like a failure of like, the one thing that I should be able to do is just like birth my child. Like I was created to do that. Like why is my body not doing it correctly? But then like I couldn't even go into labor on my own. I had to get induced. And now like I can't birth him. I don't know. There was like shame that was attached to that. But then the way more, and that didn't really like, I didn't really focus on that or really like even recognize I was feeling that until afterwards. But the big overwhelming thing was like, yeah, get him, like I want to meet my son right now. So let's make this happen. And so I pushed once and they used like a vacuum, whatever, and he was born right away. He was great. He was a 9 on the APGAR score right when he was born. So he was fine. But he was really big. He was 8 pounds, 15.4 ounces, 21 inches long, and he was not really wanting to be born. So already showing his determination there. He was born with his hand on his face, and the umbilical cord was around his neck twice, and he was holding it with his other hand. So if you could just imagine, like, that's how he was trying to be born, was like this. And so the umbilical cord around the neck is probably why his oxygen levels were like declining because it was getting like stuck and caught and stuff. Um, but yeah, they quickly like, you know, took it off of his neck when he was born, and it all like was fine. But the next part, I don't even remember all of it because they put Levi on my chest and I was like paying attention to him and watching him. But I had a lot of lacerations, and you are supposed to, your uterus is supposed to like continue to contract and get smaller right after you give birth, and mine wasn't doing that. And I had a bunch of like cervical lacerations and vaginal lacerations, and then I forget what it's called, but one other kind that's like, when they talk about degrees of tear, that's what they're talking about. But I had like a lot more than what is normal. So they spent a couple hours like trying to fix me up, and I didn't realize at that point like how severe my stuff was after he was born. But they gave me like a couple injections because I was hemorrhaging, and they were talking about giving me a blood transfusion, which they ended up not having to do. But then they gave me like antibiotics because I was like open way longer than I should have been, because they were like stitching me up and trying to like get me to stop bleeding basically. And the doctor, the OB, which yeah, it was actually like a blessing that she was there for the vacuum assisted delivery, because she was like, midwives aren't trained to help basically stitch you up that way. And so the OB helped do that, and she was already there, which was, yeah, a huge blessing. And then Emily was just standing by me and like explaining to me what was going on, and she did an incredible job like caring for me and explaining it to me. But still, I like wasn't understanding really. I was just holding Levi for the first time and was just so in awe. But yeah, she made me feel so comfortable in that moment. I think I would have been so scared otherwise. But yeah, so yeah, the OBs mentioned at one point that they normally take you into the ER if they realize that those things are going on beforehand. Sorry, it's raining, and I was just like, I thought there was something outside. So also a blessing that they didn't take me to the ER, because then I wouldn't have been able to be with Levi and Avery. And then yeah, nurses like for the next couple of days while we were in the hospital, when they were coming in, would make comments about like, it's usually not like this, like you're a champ, you know, you like are a warrior, whatever. Yeah, and I was just confused. I was like, what are they talking about? But then afterwards I realized like, wow, that did not go smoothly. And had I been alive 20, 30 years ago, had we been in a different country, like Levi and I could have both died. Even if like different decisions were made, even if they couldn't figure out like why I was hemorrhaging or something, like I could have died in childbirth. And that's crazy to think about, like how, I don't know, I've been like a relatively healthy person my whole life, and I've never been in a situation like that before where I look back and I'm like, wow, I could have actually died there. Like it would have been likely had the right medical interventions not happened. So that's just like super humbling. But then also just like, yeah, just the way that the Lord provides for us and protects us, and through other people as well. I don't think I could ever put to words what Emily meant to me in that season, and in just like, you know, choosing to go to the hospital, her letting me know like, hey, you might be diagnosed with gestational hypertension. Yeah, and then her throughout the whole process of having Levi, and then she like came back and checked in on us before she went home for the day. So yeah, Levi was born at like 1:40, and I think that they were in my room until like 4:30, just like working on me. So yeah, I was just super grateful for all of them and just the love and care that I got. And then there was way more that happened even in the hospital with like Levi having jaundice, and we had to stay extra days and things like that. And so yeah, it was just a crazy experience, and I don't think I realized until afterwards like just how blessed I was, and also the fact that like nothing that happened in the labor and delivery process was a part of my birth plan, but I felt so at peace for like almost all of it. And the hardest thing for me was choosing if I was going to get an epidural or not. But then when Avery and I talked about it and I decided that, I just felt a ton of peace. And I think that that was the greatest thing for me, was to have that plan of like, I'm not going to make decisions in labor over fear, but also knowing like the way that I give birth does not define who I am as a woman, or does not define my strength. And like finding peace in the Lord and trusting in the Lord through this process is way more important than if I get an epidural or not. So if I'm trusting the Lord in getting an epidural, that means way more than trusting myself and wanting to prove something in not getting one. But then vice versa as well. And so, I mean, I'm not telling anyone how they should go through the like labor and delivery process, but for me, and even like, if we have more kids, I don't know what my birth plan's gonna be. But that's just something that like, whatever you decide, if you're prayerful through it, and if you're trusting the Lord, saying like, I'm holding loosely to my plan because I know, Lord, that you have a plan and I'm not sure what it is. And so, I'm going to trust you in the process. I'm going to be educated. I'm going to do what I can to be prepared, but I'm also going to trust you, Lord. And Avery and I are going to pray, and Avery and I are going to support one another and care for one another. And I'm not going to be just this like crazy, like, insane, like I'm in pain so I can do whatever I want and I can be rude to people. Like, no, I'm going to choose to like love and care for these people and however I can while I'm in labor. And obviously caring for like my nurse and midwife, I'm not really caring for them. That might have not been the right word, but like loving them and appreciating them and thanking them through the process, because it is such a vulnerable thing, and they are, they've given up their lives to serve women in the most vulnerable place you'll ever be. And so I'm so grateful for that, and that, they literally gave me a life with my son that I wouldn't have otherwise. And so that made me, well, one, super grateful, and knowing like life is a gift, and really like understanding that more for myself and for Levi. Two, I think just realizing that like there are really hard things that you can't control, and life is fragile, and in the blink of an eye it can be taken from you. And so that made me even more understand that life is a gift. And then also realizing that I don't have control in a lot of the ways that I want to, and I think that that was really helpful to going into parenthood. Like, I can't control Levi, even in the birthing process. Like, he's inside my body, but I can't control him. And I can work with him and I can encourage him, but I can't control him. And so that's important as his mom to always remember that he's an individual, and like the Lord has blessed me with the ability to be his parent, but it's not my job to be in control of him, and I can't choose his decisions. And so we pray every day, at least at bedtime, that Levi never knows a day apart from the Lord. And that is my most like authentic prayer, but I also know that I'm not in control of that. The Lord is in control of that. and Levi has choice in that too. So I can do what I can do to raise him up to know who the Lord is, but it's ultimately between him and the Lord. And then I also learned, I prepared a lot going into childbirth. I had an idea of what it was going to be like. I was hoping it was going to be this like magical experience, and it was not in the way that I expected. It kind of was like magical, of just like, well, it was miraculous. It was miraculous. But I was expecting this like magical, like beautiful thing, and it was messy, and it was gross, and it was unexpected. And so in that, I've known I'm imperfect, obviously, but there's this like mantra that I hear often of like, you're the perfect parent for your child. And I think that there's purpose in you being the parent of your child. That's not a mistake, but you're not the perfect parent for your child. And I don't want to ever think that or believe that, because I am imperfect and I cannot fulfill all of Levi's needs. And I want to remember that forever, because the places where I lack and the places where I fail him and the places where he needs to be loved that I can't fulfill are heartbreaking and are going to be heartbreaking. But those places of lack are where the Lord shines most brightly, where Levi can see, oh, I don't need my mom more than I need anything else. I need the Lord more than I need anything else. And my mom, hopefully, my mom's a great mother. She loved me well, but she loved me as well as she could. And she can't love me perfectly, and she can't love me as well as the Lord loves me. And she can't care for me the way the Lord cares for me, because I don't know everything. I did not know what that birth process was going to be like, even though I prepared for so long for it. But the Lord knew, and the Lord protected us, and the Lord provided for us, and the Lord, even we were not supposed to be at WVU. I had a different OBGYN, and then at my first appointment, it just rubbed me the wrong way, and Avery and I talked about it, and we decided to change to WVU and go to Ruby. And so just everybody there was there because I changed providers while I was already pregnant, which is not something that I would do just like by myself on my own. So just like the Lord's provision is perfect, the Lord's love is perfect, the Lord's care is perfect, the Lord's peace is perfect, and when we rely on him, that's when we can live in that peace and live in that love and that wholeness, that place of wholeness, and not lacking or not living in a place of scarcity. So that whole birthing process, I guess, just like reminded me of that I cannot fulfill all of Levi's needs, and that's a beautiful thing, because it will help me lean into the Lord, and it will help me teach Levi to lean into the Lord. Not as an excuse where I don't have to try, but where I'm trying my hardest and I'm loving him as much as I can, but I cannot love him perfectly. And so in my lack, the Lord's abundance prevails, and the Lord's abundance becomes even more visible. And so I guess that's what I want to leave you with, because that is really like the biggest lesson I learned stepping into motherhood, and it's the one that just keeps coming up, that I am human and I'm limited, and I get tired and I get cranky and I get bored of mundane tasks, and I feel guilty and I feel insecure and all these things, but the Lord never meets us in that way. The Lord is never bored. The Lord is never irritated. The Lord is never tired. He is always perfectly loving us in every moment. And when we approach him, he is never distracted, but he is always wanting to hear our voice and wanting to spend time with us. And so, Levi, if you're watching this one day, I hope that you know that I love you with my entire being, and that whole process is part of what made me who I am today. And I love you so much, but I don't love you perfectly. And the Lord's abundant love prevails. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and yeah, we'll see you in some other vlogs soon. I also wanted to share, I'm in a group of mothers, Christian mothers, and we're going through this book together. It's called Risen Motherhood, Gospel Hope for Everyday Moments. And there's a chapter that talks about labor and delivery. And I just think it's really beautiful, because I think it talks about it in a way that is just very real and not sugar-coated, or not like asking, they don't make it like super spiritual, like hyper spiritual, but then also isn't like you have control of your entire birth experience. But it uses the words, talks about birth being vulnerable, undignified, intimate, and sensitive. And I was just thinking as I was reading this about those words: vulnerable, undignified, intimate, and sensitive. And undignified really like hit me, because I don't think a lot of people would describe it that way. Oh, it's beautiful, it's a miracle. And it is a miracle, and it's kind of beautiful depending on what you mean by that, but it is undignified. And vulnerable, intimate, sensitive. And I felt so vulnerable. I felt so sensitive and intimate, and it was like the most intimate experience I've ever had. And like, you're laying all your cards on the table. Yeah, you're so vulnerable. You can't control a lot of things. There's a lot of body fluids. There's a lot of reasons to apologize or to feel, just really gross, and to feel bad and feel like embarrassed. And I think in that, something that just I love about that is that it's using those words to describe labor and delivery, but it's not saying that those are bad things. Vulnerability, being undignified, being intimate, being sensitive, like those are not bad things. And the Lord created birth. Like the Lord said to be fruitful and multiply. Now the pain in childbirth is part of the fall, but birth in and of itself is part of the design. And so I just was really struck by that, of realizing that those sound like culturally like really bad things, or being like super intimate and vulnerable and sensitive is like not seen as a good thing. But at least in my experience, being put in that position to where I didn't have a choice in it. It was way outside of my comfort zone, but it allowed me to trust in the Lord and to grow in my faith and as an individual in a way that I don't think I ever would otherwise. I don't know what other position I would feel that vulnerable to, where, all bets are off. I can't fake anything. This is who I am. These are my real colors coming out. And, there are some things that I'm actually really proud of. And the way that like Avery and I really joined together and leaned on one another. And, there are some things that, ways that I was grouchy and short that I, wish I wasn't, and shows my sinful nature. And so I just thought that that was really cool to look into that, like in my experience, and to think like, this is a very vulnerable thing. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. And we are very intimate and sensitive in that experience, but that's not a bad thing. And the Lord can teach us a lot, and we can grow a lot in that. And so I want to leave you with this last quote because I think it's really good and really important. So it says, because Christ absorbed the curse, we don't find our hope in a perfectly developed birth plan. We don't trust our bodies to do what they were made to do, and we don't find our identity in how close we came to a desirable birth experience. Because of Christ's sacrifice, we place our trust in God alone, even amidst birth. Jesus Christ, in his deepest, darkest need, when he was weakest and frailest, trusted in God's plan, even to the point of death. It is a mercy that weakness in labor and delivery tears down the barriers we build up and gives us more of what we really need, God himself. Amen.